Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. There was still pasta on the stove when she slammed the door. Not burned, just unfinished. She'd made it, oddly enough. Bow ties with lemon and capers, her favorite. No one cooks dinner before detonating a marriage, right? That's what confused me most. The whole night felt like a prank. She poured wine. She complimented the napkins. Then, out of nowhere, I'm moving in with someone else. That was it. No affair confession. No guilt. Just a matter-of-fact declaration, like announcing she'd changed banks. The door didn't even close all the way. It bounced off the frame and stayed slightly ajar, like even the house didn't believe her. She didn't take a suitcase. Just her phone, purse, and gym bag. I sat there for a long time. The wine tasted sour. Not sure if it was the bottle or me. I remember looking at the pasta and thinking she added chili flakes. I told her last week I had heartburn. Small thing. But in that moment, it felt violent. I checked my phone. Nothing from Penny. Penny is our daughter. 19. Smart. Sharp-tongued. Currently obsessed with indoor plants and sending me reels of cats knocking things over. So I texted her, "Your mom just left. Said she's with someone." She replied, "Yeah, I know. Please don't make this worse." Worse? What does that even mean? By the end of the weekend, I was gone too. But not with a gym bag and someone waiting in a Tesla. I packed 2 boxes into my car and rented a storage unit that technically didn't allow overnight stays. It had no heat, no light, and smelled like lawn chairs and motor oil. But it was quiet. Safer than the house, in a weird way. Because in that house, everything screamed her name. The pillows she fluffed too aggressively. The way the fridge still had her oat milk and smug little wellness shots. Even the laundry smelled like that lavender detergent she swore helped her dreams. I couldn't sleep there. The garden I built her? She ripped out my tulips and planted succulents. The photos? Gone from every wall. Replaced with abstract prints of black rectangles on beige backgrounds. What even is that? And Penny? She visited once. To return the spare key. Didn't hug me. Didn't come inside. Didn't ask how I was doing. "I just don't want to take sides," she said, standing on the porch like a stranger. She already had. But I didn't fight. Didn't scream. Didn't even tell Lorna. That's my wife, by the way. How I found out the guy she left me for was her trainer. A guy with sleeve tattoos and a podcast about discipline through chaos. Whatever the hell that means. She expected me to beg. To bargain. I didn't. Instead, I gave her everything in court. No contest. No arguments. I waived the house. The car. The savings. I signed away 22 years like a receipt. And now? Now she's the one calling me. Panicked. The first message came at 2:11 a.m. "Are you okay?" No context. No punctuation. Just those 3 words sitting like a splinter in my notifications. It was Lorna. The same woman who walked out on a 22-year marriage without even bothering to change the Wi-Fi password. The same woman who didn't blink when our daughter stopped speaking to me. And now she wanted to know if I was okay. I stared at the screen for 15 minutes before locking it. I didn't answer. Not out of strength, but because I genuinely didn't know how I was supposed to respond to that. No, I wasn't okay. But also, I wasn't broken in the way she'd expected. She thought I'd beg. Thought I'd spiral. Thought I'd cling to her shadow like a puppy who didn't understand why the food bowl was suddenly empty. Instead, I disappeared. Not from the world. I still went to work, still shaved my neck on Mondays, still bought groceries. But from her world. I didn't post sad quotes on Facebook. Didn't call her sister for answers. Didn't show up at Penny's school unannounced to accidentally bump into her and fish for sympathy. I went silent. And Lorna, she didn't like that. By week 2, the text got longer. One morning. "I didn't expect this to happen so fast. I need to talk to you about the tax documents. Declan isn't really familiar with that stuff." Another night. "Just wondering if you're staying at the same place. No pressure, just checking in." Checking in. Like I was a hotel she left a bad Yelp review on. By the end of the month, she called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Then she sent a voice note. Something she never used to do. Her voice cracked halfway through the first sentence. Not a full sob. Just a small tear in her composure. Like the real Lorna had poked through for a moment, gasping for air. "I didn't think things would change this much," she said. "It's like you just vanished." I replayed that 4 times. It felt good. Not in a petty way. Not revenge. It just felt even. Like for once, She was the one standing in a quiet room wondering what the other person was thinking. The panic didn't really start, though, until the mail arrived. It was a small envelope. Thick paper. Official looking. It came to the storage facility because I'd changed my address just before court. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. From her. I thought you were giving up. I didn't realize you were setting yourself free. She went on about how confused she was. About how she thought Declan would feel more stable by now. How his temper was exhausting and his hustle culture nonsense was wearing thin. But the part that got me, the part that made me laugh out loud alone on a concrete floor next to a space heater, was this. Penny's been distant lately. I think she's upset about how fast I moved on. She mentioned something about staying with you for a while. I didn't even know you had a place. I had a place all right. A small, strange, liberating one. I hadn't told anyone where I was because I didn't want to be found. But now she wanted back in. Only, the door wasn't stuck open this time. It was locked. And I had the key. A week after her letter arrived, I did something she never expected. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Not even close. I still couldn't look at couples in grocery stores without feeling like I was bleeding under my shirt. But it was the kind of smile you give yourself when you realize you've been playing dead and suddenly remember you've got claws. She thought I walked away from the house because I was weak. Truth was, the house had termites. No, literally. Full-blown structural infestation. I got the inspection report the same week she moved in with Declan. I was going to bring it to court, use it to negotiate. But something in me said, no, let her have it. Let her feel like she won. 3 weeks in, she learned what I already knew. The kitchen subfloor was rotting. The beams in the sunroom were bowing. The garden irrigation? Broken. She must have spent 10 grand just stabilizing the place. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on an air mattress behind a locked roll-up door, drinking instant coffee out of a thermos, and laughing. She didn't know I had sold some of my old drafting equipment online. Didn't know I picked up freelance work on the side. Didn't know I had squirreled away enough to put a deposit on a tiny but decent rental a few towns over. And Penny? She texted me out of nowhere. Hey, can I visit this weekend? I need a break. I stared at that message for 10 minutes straight. She hadn't spoken to me in over a month. She'd chosen Lorna's side with surgical precision. And now, she was asking me for space? Turns out, Declan wasn't as fun to live with as his gym selfies made him seem. He didn't like her studying in the living room. Said it messed with the energy. He also walked around shirtless constantly, blasting Joe Rogan clips and protein shake ads at full volume like it was his national anthem. Lorna thought she was trading up. Instead, she was living with a self-help caveman who didn't use coasters and called himself a mindset architect. Penny showed up at my new place the following Saturday. She brought groceries. I cried in the bathroom so she wouldn't see. She walked around the place slowly, touching the walls, the bookshelf, the coffee table I'd made back when I still believed in forever. Then she said something I'll never forget. It feels like home in here. Weird, right? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat locked up. She stayed the whole weekend. Lorna called 3 times. Penny didn't answer once. The moment I knew something had shifted permanently, it was Sunday night. We were watching a dumb documentary about abandoned amusement parks, and Penny asked, "Why didn't you fight harder in court?" I opened my mouth to explain, to whine, to play the victim, to say how tired I was, but I stopped. And I just said, because I wasn't losing anything worth keeping. She didn't respond right away, just nodded and leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time in a long time, I felt taller than I really was. Then, the next morning, Lorna showed up. No warning. No call. Just her beige SUV pulling into the gravel lot like a queen returning to a castle she'd forgotten she'd burned down. She looked tired. Not broken. Lorna doesn't do broken, but cracked around the edges in ways she'd never let me see before. "I need to talk," she said. And I said, "You can wait outside." She stood outside my door for 6 minutes before knocking. I watched through the peephole, heart pounding like a cheap drum. Lorna always had this way of standing still, perfectly composed, even when the world was melting around her. Her arms were crossed, but not tight. More like she didn't know what to do with them. Like her body hadn't caught up with whatever her brain was trying to admit. I thought about not opening, but I did. I opened the door, stepped back, and let the silence stretch. She took it as permission, walked in slow, eyes scanning the room like she expected it to be a shrine to our marriage. Instead, she saw laundry on a chair, half a banana on the counter, and a dusty bonsai I hadn't watered in a week. She sat, didn't speak for a full minute. Then, finally, I just wanted to talk. No drama. That phrase, no drama, coming from her, was like a thunderstorm asking for quiet. I'm listening, I said flat. She swallowed hard, then started in with the kind of half-apology people give when they still think they were mostly right. Said she didn't plan for things to go this way. Said Declan had been different when it was just gym talk and smoothies, whatever that meant. Said he got darker when she moved in. Controlling. Jealous. I'm not saying I made a mistake, she added quickly. I just didn't expect to miss the calm. I stared at her. Not angrily. Just like I was looking at a photograph of someone I used to know. Familiar, but no longer real. You didn't miss me, I said. You missed not being unsettled. She flinched at that. Just a little. But it was there. I was trying to find something that made me feel alive again, she whispered. And I thought, maybe I could rebuild something with you. Eventually. That's when it hit me. She wasn't here out of love. She was here because her backup plan collapsed. Declan wasn't the escape hatch she thought he'd be. And now she was looking at me like I was a couch she left on the curb in the rain, suddenly valuable again now that it's gone. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. That would have made her feel relevant. Instead, I leaned back and asked, "Does Penny know you're here?" She blinked. No. I didn't want to involve her. She already is. The silence thickened. I could feel her trying to read me, trying to figure out what version of me was sitting across from her. The weeping mess from court? The draft dodger who handed her the house keys and disappeared? No. This version of me had something else. Not rage. Not pride. Distance. She got up, moved to the bookshelf, and picked up the photo I hadn't thrown away yet. The three of us on the beach in '09. Penny holding a seashell like it was treasure, Lorna's hand on my chest. You could have fought harder, she said softly, without looking at me. That made me laugh. Not loudly. Just a dry, tired chuckle. I did, I said. You just didn't notice. Because I wasn't fighting you. I was fighting the part of me that still wanted to matter to you. Her shoulders dropped like I'd punched the air out of her lungs. Then came the real twist. I've been talking to a lawyer, she said, about undoing some of the financial agreements. I thought maybe we could revisit things. No, I cut in. That's not happening. She froze. You signed the papers, I said. You made choices. I honored them. That's more than you did. There was a long pause. A small sound in her throat. Then, so that's it. That's it. She looked around the room one last time like she was trying to memorize it. Then, without saying goodbye, she walked to the door. Halfway out, she turned and said, "He's gone, you know. Moved out. Left me a note that just said, too much static." Whatever that means. I didn't say a word. Just shut the door behind her. Locked it. Then slid down against the frame, breathing like I'd just run 5 miles. Outside, the world kept turning. But inside that tiny, quiet room, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the smallest person in it. The day after she left my apartment, I thought maybe, just maybe, that was it. Final chapter. Door closed. Done. But with Lorna, nothing ever ends quietly. She's the kind of person who needs the last word, even if it takes her years to come up with it. So I wasn't surprised when her number popped up again. What had surprised me was who called next. It was a number I hadn't seen in almost 15 years. My older brother, Eli. We hadn't spoken since our father's funeral. Not out of malice. We just weren't built for closeness. Two different men with two entirely different ideas of what love should look like. I thought he lived in Oregon. Turns out, he was living 2 towns over. You okay? He asked, after a long silence. Define okay, I said. He laughed, but it sounded sad. She called me. My stomach twisted. What? I asked. Why the hell would she call you? She said you've been isolating. That you weren't in a good place. She was concerned. I almost dropped the phone. Of course. Of course she was already rebuilding the narrative. Shaping the story where she was the saint trying to check in on her fragile, unstable ex. She's planting seeds, I said. Yeah, he replied. But I remember how she used to prune you in public. I'm not buying it. That line stopped me cold. Prune you in public. He was right. She had a habit of correcting me mid-sentence, laughing at my phrasing, smoothing my collar like I was a poorly trained dog. But hearing someone else say it, it cracked something open in my ribs. Then Eli asked, "Did you ever tell her about the land?" My spine straightened like someone poured ice water through it. What land? You know what land. I hadn't thought about it in years. It was a tiny inheritance from our grandfather, a patch of nothing in rural North Carolina with a shed, a creek, and a view of absolutely nowhere. Worth almost nothing when we inherited it. But now it sat right on the edge of an upcoming development project. The kind with big glossy signs and fake lakes. Its value had quadrupled in 5 years. No, I hadn't told her. Not a word. It was mine before we married, and I never changed the title. Why do you bring it up now? I asked. Because she asked about it, he said. There it was. She was digging. Quietly, strategically, desperately. Not because she wanted reconciliation, but because she thought maybe, just maybe, she left something behind when she walked out, and now she wanted it back. And I realized something awful. This woman wasn't haunted by love. She was haunted by leverage. Later that night, I sat with Penny in the small kitchen, both of us sipping tea like something out of a sad commercial. She hadn't gone back to her mom's. Said she needed more time to think. I asked her, gently, what she remembered about her mom and me growing up. She paused. You were the calm one, she said. Even when she made you small. That landed harder than I expected. Why didn't you fight back more? She asked. Because I thought fighting made me the villain. Because I didn't want to win over someone I loved. Because every time I raised my voice, her silence punished me worse. I don't know, I answered. But I did know. And now? Now I was starting to understand that the only real mistake I made wasn't letting her go. It was ever trying to keep her in the first place. 2 days later, she showed up again. This time, it wasn't just her. She brought a man. Not Declan. Someone older. Suited. Formal. A real estate attorney. And when I opened the door, she smiled with a kind of cold sweetness that made me nauseous. Hey, Chess, she said. We need to talk about what's legally still considered marital property. She thought I was going to fold. She had no idea what I'd been building in the background. And she definitely didn't know who was already on my side. She came armed with contracts. The man beside her, thin, tall, all gray suit and no chin, introduced himself with a handshake that felt like wet cardboard. I'm just here to clarify a few outstanding items, he said, eyes not even meeting mine. He handed me a folder. Inside, copies of our divorce agreement, highlighter marks on clauses I barely remembered signing. A sticky note attached to the front read, possible undisclosed assets. Assets. That's what I had become. Not a person. Not a memory. Not the man who stayed up when she had night sweats or drove 4 hours for her favorite pumpkin butter. Just a loose end. A file folder. This land, the lawyer said, tapping one of the pages. Was it acquired prior to marriage, or during? I looked at Lorna. She didn't flinch. She wore a faint smile, the kind people wear when they're about to cash a check. It was mine before, I said. Inherited. Never shared. He nodded, scribbled something, and kept talking, but I stopped listening. All I could hear was my pulse. I was shaking. Not from fear, from rage I didn't know how to carry anymore. I wasn't a fighter. I'd always been the one to smooth over, make peace, let go. But something about the way she stood there, arms folded like she was entitled to my silence, made me want to scream. Instead, I spoke quietly. You brought a man to claim dirt your boots never touched. Her eyes flicked up, finally registering something behind my calm. I gave you everything, I said, and you walked away with it like you earned it. Now you're circling back for scraps? Her lawyer started to say something, but I cut him off. You don't need to mail anything, I said, handing him the folder. Just wait. And I closed the door. Penny was sitting in the next room. She'd heard everything. She looked up at me, stunned. Is she trying to take more? I nodded. She wants land she never even visited. Penny stood up, walked to the window, and stared out for a while. Then she said the last thing I expected. I want to testify. I turned to her. What? If she tries anything? If this goes to court? I want to testify. I want to tell them what she did. What she said. How she acted. I want to be there. It hit me all at once, the shift. This wasn't about land. It was about legacy. Lorna wanted to rewrite the story of our life. Make herself the tragic heroine. Turn me into the fool who crumbled while she reclaimed her power. But she forgot something. I didn't just give her my time. I gave her witnesses. Penny had seen everything. The fights. The manipulations. The long silences after I did something as simple as buy the wrong brand of detergent. She'd watched her mother slowly rewrite our lives in real time, twisting the facts, painting herself as the one who endured rather than the one who engineered the collapse. And now she wasn't buying it. That night, I made a phone call of my own. Not to a lawyer. To Eli. I told him everything. The visit. The land. The paperwork. He didn't hesitate. "I'll call my guy," he said. "And you won't pay a dime. We'll shut this down fast." I wanted to protest. Say I didn't want to drag it out. But something in me said, no more folding. Not for her. Not for peace. The next morning, a certified letter was sent from Eli's attorney, denying all claims, citing premarital ownership, and including a courtesy copy of the original deed signed by our grandfather himself. But I didn't stop there. I mailed her something else. An envelope. Inside, a printed photo of the land. Just the shed. The creek. A black and white snapshot I'd taken when I first inherited it, back when I thought I'd one day build a cabin for us. On the back, I'd written, "You had the house. You had the car. You had the family. This is mine." She didn't respond. Not yet. But Penny did. She walked in that evening, carrying 2 suitcases. "I'm moving in," she said. "And if she asks, you don't know where I am." Then she hugged me. Really hugged me. And for the first time since the door slammed months ago, I realized I hadn't lost everything. She had. And she was just beginning to feel it. It arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. No stamps. Just my name, written in her looping, careful script. The one she used to use for birthday cards and passive-aggressive notes about dishes in the sink. It was slid under my door. Penny saw it first, picked it up and handed it to me without a word. Her expression was tight, unreadable. Like she'd already guessed what was inside and didn't want to be right. I held it for a minute before opening it. My hands were steady, surprisingly so. I had been expecting another apology letter in disguise, another attempt at emotional blackmail wrapped in self-reflection. But what I read wasn't anything like that. It was worse. It was her confession. Not about Declan. That was old news now. That had already rotted. No, this was about something else. Something sacred. Something I thought we had both buried and mourned in silence. "Chester," it began, "there's something I've never told you, and I can't carry it anymore. I know what I'm about to say will change how you see everything, and maybe that's what I deserve." I stopped reading right there. I already knew. I just knew. Years ago, maybe 15, maybe 16, Lorna had a miscarriage. At least, that's what she told me. It was early, barely confirmed. I remember the morning, her sitting on the bathroom floor, mascara running, saying, "It's gone. Don't ask me about it." I didn't ask. I didn't push. I just held her. I buried the grief before I even fully met it. But now, in her letter, the truth came out. She had terminated the pregnancy. Without telling me. Not out of health concerns. Not out of fear. But because, in her words, I didn't want to be trapped. I wasn't ready. And I knew if I told you, you'd have begged me to keep it. You would have promised things. You would have loved me more. And I couldn't live with that. I dropped the letter. Penny was watching me. She hadn't read it. But she knew, from the color draining from my face, from the way I sat down like gravity had changed. "I need a second," I said. She nodded and left the room. I stared at the ceiling for 10 straight minutes. And for the first time in months, I wept. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd been perfecting. This was something else. Something guttural. Animal. It wasn't just about the child we never had. It was about how easily she had removed me from the equation. Not just in court, not just in our marriage, but in life itself. She'd made a decision that reshaped our entire future and carried it like a secret souvenir for over a decade. I thought I knew betrayal. But this was history rewritten in silence. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't even keep it. I burned it. That night, Penny and I sat outside on the back steps. She handed me a blanket and said nothing. Just sat with me while the crickets played their usual songs. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Did you know I was planned?" It hit me like a slap. I looked at her, blinking through the smoke of memory. "She told me once," Penny continued, "that you made charts, savings plans. You bought parenting books. You even learned how to cook because you wanted to be the one to make my lunches." I nodded. "That's true." She looked at me, eyes glassy. She made it sound annoying, controlling, like you were overbearing. "But I think you were just scared and trying." I whispered. I always was. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of truth, of grief, of something cleaner than either of us expected. Then she said something I'll never forget. She thinks power is having the last word, but I think power is having the last piece. I didn't sleep that night, not out of pain, but because for the first time, I realized she had nothing left to throw at me. No secret, no threat, no memory she could weaponize. And still, I was standing, barefoot, broken, bruised, but whole. And the next morning, Penny told me she had something to show me. Something Lorna didn't know about. Something that would make her really panic. Penny woke me up at 7:12 the next morning. Not with words, just the soft knock of a coffee mug against the kitchen counter. "I want to show you something," she said. I was still groggy, but there was something in her tone. Calm, settled, different. She pulled out her laptop and sat across from me at the tiny table that had become our shared anchor the past few weeks. The screen flickered to life, and there it was. An email thread. Between her and Lorna. Dozens of messages. Going back months. It started right after the separation. At first, they were friendly, transactional. Lorna updating her on the move, Declan decorating the new apartment. Then the tone shifted. More defensive. Then downright manipulative. She said I had to pick a side, Penny said softly. That she didn't want to share emotional custody anymore. I read the line on the screen. "If you're still spending time with your father, it's going to confuse your loyalty. I need to know you're with me." She said that. I whispered. Penny nodded. That's when I stopped replying. She clicked one more folder, voice recordings. She didn't know I was saving these. But I wanted to remember what gaslighting sounded like, in case I ever started to doubt myself. My breath caught. There were clips of phone calls, voicemails, snippets of conversations recorded in Lorna's car, her accusing Penny of being ungrateful, of choosing weakness, of romanticizing your father's mediocrity. It wasn't just cruel. It was calculated. And now we had it all. "What do you want to do with it?" I asked. Penny shrugged. "Nothing." I blinked. "Nothing." She smiled. Not bitter, not smug, just free. She wanted me to become a mirror of her, to reflect her pain back to the world and call it strength. But I don't want to win. I want peace. And suddenly, I understood everything. Lorna had spent her entire life trying to control the story. She wanted to be the architect of every narrative, the heroine of every version. But in doing so, she destroyed the only real proof of her goodness, the people who once loved her. She had lost us both, not because of what she did, but because of who she insisted on being after. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out an old wooden box, the only thing I'd saved from our wedding. Inside were our vows, scribbled on folded note cards, still stained from the rain that fell during our backyard ceremony. I opened hers and read the last line. "I promise to never let go of the hand that steadies me." She had let go. I hadn't. But now, I was ready to. Later that week, I sent her a final letter. Just one sentence. "This is the last time you'll hear from me, and the first time I truly feel like myself." No threats, no bitterness, no war, just the truth. She didn't reply, but Penny did something better. She unpacked her bags, enrolled in a local college, got a part-time job at the library down the street. We fell into a rhythm, not perfect, not rehearsed, but ours. We cooked dinners, watched trash TV, laughed, argued, took walks in the evening. And one Sunday, she looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you." I swallowed hard. "Why?" "Because you lost everything and became more." I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like years. Not because I had won, but because I didn't need to. And in the end, that was the revenge. The quiet kind. The lasting kind. The kind she'll feel every day she scrolls through her life and finds nothing real left to touch. And me? I've got a cracked coffee table, a crooked bookshelf, and a daughter who chose truth over comfort. That's more than enough. That's everything.